Okay, so today, so this is part one of our four-part series entitled Minimalist PR. The reason I wanted to do this conversation, because I feel like oftentimes when we're talking about marketing, public relations, communication for business, it tends to be very overwhelming, right? There's a lot of options out there. We're going to be diving into a little bit about social media. It's a great example. There's tons of different platforms. There's tons of different ways to create content. But I think people tend to get a little overwhelmed with exactly how to do it. Also, what to do for their particular business. And then I think the biggest piece is bringing it all together. So having these individual elements of a PR or a marketing plan is great, but fitting them all together is oftentimes the barrier for a lot of people to start implementing these. They know what they need to do. They're not necessarily sure how to do it, or even more importantly, how it fits together in kind of a bigger picture. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Really what we're talking about is I want you guys to think of this as a self-audit. So we're going to be looking at four different elements of your PR and marketing plan. I do know that some of my students from the two institutions that I work with have signed up for this course. So this might be a little bit of a repeat from some stuff that we've covered in class, but hopefully we'll get to do a little deeper dive into this. But we're going to be talking about four different elements. And then we're going to be talking about how you can layer them together. So I want you to think about this as a self-audit. So as we're talking about websites, I want you to think about your own website, your experience with paid advertising, your experience with social media, okay? And start thinking about where you are right now in your business, and then start thinking about where you want to be in your business and the timeline is up to you, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, kind of thinking about those elements a little bit in a bigger picture. Okay. So I want to introduce you to a term called the PESO model, and it is an acronym. Now, I did not come up with this model. This is not my model. It's brilliant. I wish I had come up with it because it's fantastic, but it is something that I teach in my public relations courses, and it is something I apply with my own clients and my own business as well. So if you are interested, and I will provide some links I'm going to create a page with the recording with some additional links as well. So I will link a little bit more about this particular book. So it's a book called Spin Sucks. Jeannie Dietrich also has a number of courses that she runs about the PESO model. And she's got a great blog as well. So I'll link all of this if you wanted to learn more, do a bit of a deeper dive into this particular model. But what we're talking about today is pretty surface level and how it can apply directly to your business. So PESO stands for paid, earned, shared, and owned. Okay, and we're going to break these down one at a time. So the first one we're going to talk about is paid media. So paid media, the kind of official definition, textbook definition, is communication channels that are purchased by an organization. Okay, so these are what you would consider your typical paid advertisements, right? So there are lots of pros and cons, and probably a different discussion for a different day. There's lots of pros and cons to tackling each of these four categories for your particular business. One of those elements that you have to consider when you are considering paid advertising is that the more you spend, the more people you will reach. It's just how it goes, right? So if you spend, I think, social media, we'll get into this a little bit in our discussion piece, but if you've done any social media advertising, if you spend $10 a day on an Instagram ad versus $100 a day, the amount of people you're going to be getting, more people, the more money that you spend. Okay. So that's definitely something that you want to keep in mind when you are thinking about paid media. The other thing that you have to consider in terms of paid media is budget considerations. Budget is obviously, you need a budget for this particular route. Now, there's various ways of how to allocate those budgets, right? So, I mean, you don't have to go and put, an ad worth $100,000 in Vogue magazine. There's lots of ways to do much more accessible advertising, paid ads. But budget does tend to be a large consideration when I am speaking to people about paid advertisements. Do they have a budget? Do they have a monthly budget? Oftentimes budgets can balloon. as well. We think we're going to start out with, $100 on a Facebook ad, but you just keep building and building, or on, Google ads, you start out with a little Google ad campaign, you forget to turn it off, and you just end up getting charged month over month over month. And all of a sudden at the end of the year, you're doing your taxes and you realized, you had a budget for $200 for paid advertising, but you actually spent $2,000 on paid advertising. It happens. So when you are thinking about integrating paid advertising into your marketing and PR plans, definitely budget has to be a consideration. This is the most expensive category of media that we're going to be talking about today. You have to have money to do it. That's what paid means. So in terms of when we're talking about layering, we're going to talk about it towards the end of the presentation. The paid category is the last one that we want to consider. We want to get the E, the S, and the O, the earned, the shared, and the earned, shared, and owned. We want to get those up and going before we start diving into paid media. So that is definitely a consideration when we're thinking about this category. So yeah, this is exactly what you would think about as typical advertising. So some examples would be traditional print or broadcast advertising. We're all familiar with, magazines, right? Magazines have advertising in them. Broadcast, broadcast is changing a little bit. The next generation is not watching television, cable television the way that they used to, where we would see those broadcast commercials. People are streaming more. Now the streaming services are getting wise to this. For example, I have Amazon Prime. They are showing ads, kind of very typical, traditional, what we would consider TV ads. We're seeing those in Amazon Prime right now. So, the streaming services are kind of in, I think, a bit of a flux right now. But you could also consider broadcast advertising as YouTube. If you have a YouTube channel, you might do paid advertising in there as well. And then, the typical radio advertising as well. So, the kind of traditional stuff that you think about. Now, again, this isn't new media anymore. This is very established media, but there's lots of social media advertising. So pretty much every platform out there right now has a paid option. So whether it's so Meta has their, I think it's called their Ad Center now, and you can combine Facebook and Instagram advertising. YouTube has had advertising forever. TikTok, the TikTok advertising is really ramping up as well. And then pretty much every platform, if you're not doing a typical ad, you could also boost posts as well. So this was sort of that first iteration of social media when it was first introduced. You could actually just boost a specific post for a certain amount. So really sort of thinking about different ways of social media advertising as well. Online ads. So now we're getting into Google ads. Or other, if you have advertising on websites, those banner ads used to be very popular. I don't know that a ton of websites are doing them anymore, but you do see them every once in a while where you get an ad at the top of the page, or you'll get advertisements running on the sidebar of a page. So that would be considered online advertising as well. Pay-per-click ads. So again, this is more of those Google ad style of advertising where you are paying, it's a cost per click. So you're paying a little bit of money every time somebody clicks on that link. But the idea is that you're generating leads and you're generating sales from those advertisements. Sponsored content could also fit into here as well. We won't talk a lot about influencer marketing, but influencer marketing is huge right now. So you could consider paid advertisements if you are working with a specific Instagram influencer and you are paying them to promote your product, or you're paying them to post about your product on their grid. That is an ad or sponsored content. So that could be part of your paid strategy as well. Email marketing could also be included in this. So anytime you have to put money towards, something you're getting out to your audience, that would fit under the paid media category. So it's a very old, not great ad, not great quality, but you'll see why I used this one. So this is an old ad for Shark vacuum cleaners. pretty typical what you would see in, say, either a smaller, it could be a small ad in a newspaper, or I could also see this as a full page ad in a magazine as well. So this would be a very typical ad. You can see the internal team at Shark has created this. It's got images of the product. It's got a little, save 70% off. It's got some price structure down here. So very, very, very typical print ad that you would see. So we're going to talk about earned media now. So this is that E in peso. And this is where, so if you know me and you know my business, this is where I focus on is earned media, also known as media relations. So this is my specific area of expertise. So again, kind of that textbook definition of earned media is journalism-based communication channels that provide opportunities for the credible presentation of organizational messaging to larger audience through the news media. So this is essentially getting your name in the news media, whether it's traditional or non-traditional, without having to pay for it. Okay, so this is what I specialize in. I get my clients on, so actually we've been doing well on television recently. I've had a lot of clients in the last specifically 3 years on a lot of those morning shows. So breakfast television, CHCH Morning Live, CTV, Your Morning, Global This Morning. So those kind of like lifestyle-y television shows, my clients do quite well on those. We don't pay for those spots. So I had a client down at CTV last week. She did a segment. No money was exchanged. So, it wasn't like I called up the producer and I said, hey, we've got, $1,000, get my client on your show. That doesn't happen. This is all earned. It's built through relationships. I have really good relationships with a number of producers at the studios. So when I am working with a client, I can send them an email and I can say, here's my client. This is why she's great for this program. Here's the topic she can talk about. And they'll either come back and say, yep, not for us, or yep, this is great. Let's have them in, on so and so date. So it's basically, it all comes down to building relationships and pitching story ideas to the various media outlets that make sense for them. And that's really where I focus a lot of my training on for my clients as well. So here we present messaging. When you're doing earned media, you get to present messaging. You extend your visibility, right? It's a borrowed audience, right? So when you're on breakfast television, their audience is up over the million. Right. So instead of building your own audience of 1 million people, you get to go on breakfast television and borrow their audience. So you are extending your visibility. You're enhancing credibility, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as the presentation goes on. We're also going to promote ideas and ideals. So let them know about your business. And then that idea of know, like, and trust, right? So that is that key in marketing is people getting to know you, getting to like you, and then ultimately getting to trust you, so that, they'll purchase your product. So a little bit more about earned media. So it is news coverage and positive public opinion that results. They must be earned. We do not pay for this coverage. This is sometimes called free media because it can't be bought. This is gained through interviews, background information, news releases. Maybe you're writing op-ed pieces, or other ways that you're assisting journalists with their content. You can also do some earned media through special events. So I personally have done this where I have hosted events for my network, and CTV got wind of it and came and was talking about why we were getting together, and we were on our events made the news a couple of times because they were local and they were interesting, and again we had a good relationship with the local CTV stations. So sometimes hosting those special events can generate some of that media coverage that you're looking for, and that would be earned media. And again, another word for earned media is media relations. So building relationships with media. So some examples of earned media. So it could be stuff like mentions, a blogger or a columnist mentioning you or your product, getting online reviews and ratings, gift guides. These are huge in the beauty industry. There's all of the, at the holiday season, right? 10 gifts under $10, or, 10 great gifts for your mom for Mother's Day. Right. So if you have a product-based business, gift guides are a huge piece of earned media. Oftentimes, testimonials can be considered earned media as well. References and letters to the editors, online comments, word of mouth. So mentioning an organization by customers or other members of your audience. Say if they're doing their own earned media, right? And you get sort of a secondary mention. So there's all kinds of way to earn this media. So again, a practical example here. So remember I showed you the paid ad with Shark. This is a different way to kind of earn some media. So this is not specifically about the product of Shark vacuums. This is an interview with Sophie, the senior engineering manager at Shark Robotics. So rather than presenting the product itself, they're presenting Sophie as a thought leader in women in tech. So this would have been an article that they pitched. Maybe they were looking to do profiles of, senior technical advisors in the tech industry, and Sophie's name was put forward. So this would not have been a paid advertisement. This is an interview that they would have done talking about women in technology and STEM. So there's the link if you wanted to actually read the article. So that's an example of earned media. Another example here, this is a product. This would be more of like a product placement. So for example, the writer here, Sarah, was likely doing some reviews of some of the best Shark vacuum cleaners. So It says right here, editors independently researched, tested, and recommended these products. So this is not a paid spot. Somebody thought that this was a great idea to do some vacuum reviews and give some recommendations. Likely. So was published in September. So maybe thinking heading towards like the holiday season, right? Lots of those types of reviews. So this would be another example. So the first one is more of like a thought leadership placement. This one is a specific product placement. Right. So then we're getting into shared media. So we're adding our third layer here. So again, the textbook definition of shared media is communication channels not controlled by the organization, often providing user-generated messaging that's shared on social media networks and usually for free. So what we are talking about here of shared media is social media. So anytime that you are creating content, or others are creating content for you, user-generated content on a social media platform, that would be considered part of your shared media strategy. Now, we obviously think of the big ones, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook as social networks, but don't forget about stuff like YouTube. LinkedIn is gaining a lot of popularity. Twitter or X, whatever it is, still exists. Reddit is also considered there are people who have entire Reddit strategies as part of their shared media. Having a Slack channel. So we're not just talking about, I know for my audience, we're mostly small businesses, but there are lots of larger businesses that use internal Slack channels with their employees. And that would be considered like an internal social network. And that would be part of the shared media strategy as well. And then we are talking also about user-generated content. So people who are sharing about you and your product or your business organically. So again, we'll use the beauty example, right? Somebody buys a new face cream. They go on their Instagram account, they say how much they love their face cream. Nobody paid them to say that. It was just some organic, somebody liked it and they talked about it with their network. So that's user generated content. And it is essentially the equivalency of word of mouth sometimes. It's very trustworthy information. It comes off as very authentic user generated content. So when you are thinking about shared media, user generated content is an important part of your strategy. So some examples of shared media. So Facebook groups, right? So whether you're running a Facebook group, so this is very popular in the wellness industries, where a wellness practitioner will have a Facebook group specifically either for their clientele, for say like a course that they're running, they'll have a separate Facebook group, or if there's some specific type of information that they want to share. So say a nutritionist is sharing some information about gut health, then they can create a Facebook group where they'll just be sharing with people who are interested in gut health. So Facebook groups, maybe you're vlogging on YouTube. Pinterest also kind of gets forgotten oftentimes, especially if you're a visual business. Pinterest is really important. So Pinterest boards could be part of your shared media. Anytime when you're counting up, we'll talk a little bit more about metrics coming up and measurements, but when you're thinking about shared media, you also have to consider the likes, if you're on X, the retweets, or the re-X's, I don't even know what the terminology is, the comments, the shares, that's all part of your shared media when you are evaluating it. Maybe you're creating video content and posting it on TikTok. I already mentioned if you're as like an internal method of communication, if you're contacting your employees through a Slack channel, that would also be considered part of your shared media. Sometimes you can also, include like Yelp reviews. If you are in the service industry, could be considered shared media because it's on a third-party platform. Another example would be, say, like an Instagram contest, right? Where you're running like a hashtag contest or you're asking people to do something for, a prize. That could also be part of your shared media strategy as well. So again, looking at an example, so we're going to stick with our friends at Shark. So this would be an example of one of their shared media, which is just their Facebook company page. So there's lots of different ways to have shared media on Facebook. Specifically, you can have a page. You could be presented as an individual posting content. You can have different groups. You can host events right through Facebook. There's all different kinds of ways to use Facebook for shared media, but this is just a very simple way. This is a company page. It's listed as a brand, and then they're able to share their content on this Facebook. So our last layer here of our peso model is our owned media. Now, owned media, again, the little textbook example here is communication models that are published or produced by the organization, which controls the message of the content, as well as its timing, packaging, distribution, and audience access. So as it states, you own the media, you own it. So again, this is also known as kind of a more general term for the of content. Okay, we hear this all the time, right? We know content creators is a term that probably most people are familiar with. But when you're thinking of owned media, you are thinking about the content that you are creating. Now, the big difference between owned media and shared media is that the owned media lives on your website, or it lives on a platform that you actually own. So this is not content for sites like LinkedIn. Substack is a microblogging site. If you're creating Instagram Reels, those are part of the shared media, because you're essentially renting, for lack of a better term, you're renting space on their platforms. If Instagram tomorrow were to shut down, we've all had this experience who are on Instagram, right? Where Instagram has some glitch and they're down for a day, right? If for some reason Instagram were just to disappear off the face of the earth, you own nothing. You have no access to your followers. You have no access to your content. You own nothing. So the way that you can think about this is that the when you're putting something out on a third-party platform, you're renting space from that platform. Okay? You do not own any content that you put on those platforms. So what we do want to start thinking about is how we can integrate owned media into our strategy. So again, we're going to stick with our little shark example here. This is an example of their owned media. This is their website. Okay, so when we're talking about types of content, right, they've got a little customer care section here where they answer some questions about, say, how to, maintenance and how to take care of your shark. And then they also have a little blog section. Now they don't call it blog, they call it tips and tricks. All right, and it is a blog with different ways to clean and tips on caring for your vacuum. And so they've kind of taken the idea of not just putting product information on their website, is actually adding some educational material onto their website as well. So that's the owned media. Now, when you integrate these categories together, so inevitably somebody's going to ask about, well, what about influencer marketing? There are some parts of the marketing world that just don't fit into one of these four categories neatly, that they are actually part of an integrated strategy where you are looking at more than one of these categories. So again, examples are influencer marketing, lead generation, inbound marketing. If you're working with charities, corporate social responsibility, some user generated content can kind of blur categories as well. AI integration, using various publishing platforms. And then when you are talking about SEO, there is a bit of an overlap with a number of different categories. So don't always feel like when you're thinking about your marketing content that it is going to fit into one of these four categories neatly. It does actually, there is some crossover. all brings us to bringing this all together. Okay. So Jeannie Dietrich, again, who came up with this model, really calls when you're able to bring all of these, when you're able to bring and integrate all four of these categories together in your marketing and PR strategy, she calls it the golden ticket. So you are really able to establish expertise, you're gaining experience, you're gaining authority, right? Whether that's thought leadership or actual domain authority, right? In terms of like when you're looking at your Google Analytics. And then also, we've already talked a little bit about that know, like, and trust, but you are able to build that trust factor with your audience or your publics as well. So this is really what we're looking for, is to bring these categories together and create that golden ticket for your business. So where are we going to start? So even though it is PESO, P-E-S-O, I think that has more to do with having a nice little acronym. But what we actually want to do is we want to layer these four elements into our business. So where are we going to start? Well, you start with your owned media first and foremost. Have we heard of the term get your house in order? Get your assets in order. Right. So if you don't have a website, that is probably the first thing that you want to do. If you have a website, but it hasn't been updated in a while, probably pretty high up on your priority list. If you have a website, but you don't have a content strategy for a website, right, then that's probably where you want to start. Even today, like I said in my email, I'm going to give you some actionable tips that you can implement even today. Think about where you are with your website and really hone in on a content strategy, right? If you don't have a blog, maybe this is the time to start thinking about how you can implement a blog into your website. And you're going to use this as your hub. So I always say the website is the hub and everything else gets distributed out from the website, right? So this brings us back to SEO, right? You're driving traffic to your website so that they can buy now or book an appointment or whatever your final call to action is. It has to happen on your website. So you want to be driving people as much as you can to your website. You also want to make sure that your assets are owned, right? So if you are creating content, say on a Substack, right, you also want to make sure that you're posting that on your website as well, or if there's some access to it. So again, you're using the website as a hub of information. So you've got your own media, okay, get that organized. Then the next layer you're going to add on is your shared media, right? Your shared media really has to be in alignment with your goals. So I have a lot of clients coming to me and saying, well, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, but I want to be on TikTok and I want to be on Pinterest and I want to be on Discord and I want to be on a Slack channel. Like you can't be everything to everybody all the time. This is where things start to balloon, right? We are talking about minimalist PR, minimalist marketing. Have your goals set and then make strategic decisions about what platforms make the most sense for the people that you're trying to reach, right? So this comes back to audience, understanding your audience, right? Understanding that target market. Who do you want to reach and where are they hanging out? Right? If I'm trying to reach, a bunch of 25-year-olds with my beauty product, I am not going to be on Facebook. I'm not going to waste my time on Facebook. I'm going to be making video content for TikTok and Instagram. So you have to be very, very strategic, especially when you're taking a minimalist approach to shared content. And this all comes back to research and data, right? So researching your audience, knowing who they are, knowing what they want, what they like, what they don't like, and also where they're hanging out as well. So that would be the next layer that you're going to want to add onto your strategy. Then once you've got that organized, then you're going to start looking at earned media. Okay. So you're going to be looking at different ways that you can start driving traffic to your owned and your shared channels, right? Earned media builds credibility, right? Anytime. So one of the big draws to earned media, if you get an interview, say in the Globe and Mail, and the Globe and Mail, very trustworthy magazine or newspaper here in Canada. If the Globe and Mail trusts you to speak about your area of expertise, then your audience should trust you as well, right? So it does give you that endorsement, a very organic way to get an endorsement from a very well-respected source. Don't shy away from earned media. Sometimes we can get our owned media, we can get our shared media, and then we kind of stop there. Where earned media is a little bit intimidating. You don't know how to do it, you don't know where to start. And that's kind of what the next three parts of the series are going to help you with. It's going to show you that anybody can jump in to earned media. But yeah, don't shy away from it. Think about how you're going to integrate it into the first two steps and then adding that earned media level on. And then finally, as we talked about, then you're going to do your paid media, right? If you are paying for paid media and your website is full of broken links and the messaging is off and it hasn't been updated, you're wasting opportunities, right? Say you're paying for a Google ad. They're going to click on that Google ad and then it's going to take them to a website that isn't appealing, that isn't getting the message across. You're missing opportunities. So it really does come in, and it is the last thing that you want to consider. And again, I wanted to give you actionable pieces that didn't cost a lot of money, right? So when we're starting out with marketing and we're starting out evaluating and doing a little self-audit, we don't want to jump in with paid advertising. There's lots of things that you can do for some of that organic reach before you jump into paid services.